So I just want to first welcome everyone and say good evening and thank you all for joining us here tonight. I hope everyone is comfy and cozy with a nice beverage and some snacks perhaps by your side. Just have a couple of quick announcements before we officially start the program. Just a reminder, the Meadows remains closed to the general public. We've worked diligently though to create some 3D tours, so those of you that are both near and far and not able to come visit in person right now, you can still have some interaction with the current exhibitions. And I do hope you have a chance to explore and that you enjoy it when you do. We have a few more virtual events coming up in the near future. Michelle Burdine will be returning to moderate a panel discussion titled Bodily Possession, an interdisciplinary panel discussion about women with Centenary faculty Dr. Andia Augustine Billy, Dr. Amanda Donahoe, Dr. Jama Grove, and Dr. Michelle Wolkemer. And this will take place in just a little over 2 weeks on the 29th. Last but not least, Odette England will finally join us to talk about her book, Keeper of the Hearth. She was originally scheduled to visit us last spring, but the pandemic had different plans. And it's just as a side note to that, the exhibition for the original work included in that book is currently on display at the Houston Center for Photography. So if you're in that area, pop on over and check that out. And incidentally, this talk is going to take place on Roland Barthes' birthday. And his book, The Camera Lucida, was the inspiration for the project Keeper of the Hearth. The dates and registration links for these two upcoming events can be found on the Meadows website under events, and we will of course certainly be making those announcements on social media with details as each event approaches. And lastly, just a couple few Zoom webinar tips. Feel free to use the chat function if you want to say hi to somebody. When you're so inclined, feel free to do that. But if you have a question for the members of the Due South Co-op, please use the Q&A window to type them in, and I'll read them out at the end of the presentation. And one last little tip, we do encourage you to view this talk in full screen so that you can see the amazing images they'll be sharing tonight. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the members of Due South Co-op: Katie Benjamin, Ashley Coleman, David Mccarty, Ellen Rogers, and Ryan Steed. They began collaborating in 2018, and this is their second collaborative body of work. Their first is titled 4 Kinds of Y'all. So being conscious of time, I'm going to leave it to the audience to take a look at their individual accomplishments, because this is a very talented group, and I will shut up now so you guys can listen to them and not me. And so with that being said, it's my pleasure to turn the controls over to Due South Co-op. Welcome, and thank you for joining us and speaking with us tonight.
Thanks, Heather.
No, thank you, Heather, and thank all of you for attending. It is, first of all, an honor and a privilege to take part in this and have our work being exhibited at the Meadows Museum. We're over the moon for that and couldn't be more proud of that. So we all collectively as a group want to thank the Meadows Museum and Heather Wetzel. Without her in the museum, this wouldn't be taking part. So big props to y'all. To really understand what this show is and how it formed is you have to have kind of a better idea of how we formed, which was a very organic thing. In the most simplified way, we all met at different times in certain ways. Ashley and I and Katie met at a show in Georgia that David was at as well, and we all had work showing, but yet we were never all together at once. And Ashley had the hindsight to make that happen at a later date, which worked out great. She chaired a photo walk in Greenville, Mississippi, where Greenwood. That's my first Mississippi strike for tonight. There will be more. Those of you that are watching from
in a different county,
doesn't matter. Those of you that are watching from Shreveport, I am like you, born on the right side of the river. Everybody else on the panel is not. That's first and foremost to address. You'll notice their responses, but no, we all met up at this photo walk in Greenwood that Ashley put together, and the 5 of us are just kind of gelled instantly because ultimately we were all making work separately from one another, but we all were making work about the same thing, which is where we're from, this question of home. And as we're sitting there talking, the 5 of us, we got together at a later date. We said we would meet up in Jackson at Ashley's home for a kind of our own little private personal photo walk. And anytime you put Southern photographers together, the issue always comes up of the helicoptering act, which is the common act of seeing art made in and about the South by a New York Times photographer that's based out of Seattle. Or once I saw a photo essay on the Delta made by a Canadian photographer. And all props to them, and the work was good. But the thing is, we collectively came together to make work where the accent matches the image. We're invested in where we're from. We're invested in home, and our work is definitely that exploration from it. So it became very, very easy and a natural thing just to combine all together and produce a show. And our first show that we did was Four Kinds of Y'all, as Heather mentioned. But what this second show really is pushing that collaborative effort that we did from Four Kinds of Y'all into a new direction. So we can go to the next slide. Sorry for the delay here. So the show that that is currently hanging in the Meadows Museum that we'll be talking tonight is our second show together, and we formed 2017 officially.
Early 2018.
Early 2018 in my head. It's always 17. But long story short, what Between the Margins was a clear departure from Four Kinds of Y'all. Between the Margins was all about, at its core, a collaborative effort of making a body of work that is one voice, to really question what authorship is and what authorship is in the photo. And what we wanted to do was completely kill the author. So Between the Margins became of that piece of who made the images it's inconsequential to us. It's about the entire series having one voice. So you're not ever looking for the author, you're looking for the images to string all together to make this one cohesive body of work. And the reason why it's Between the Margins is we've spent an incredible amount of time together. I feel like I've known the people of this group my entire life. It's a blessing and, quite frankly, a curse. But I wouldn't change anything about it. But as you work with people like this, and sometimes we're working as a group all together, and other times you're on your own accord, that you bring images back to the group, or maybe it's Ellen and Ashley shooting sometime, or vice versa. We're always trying to bring the best thing forward from the group. And Between the Margins, the reason why it has that title is we've started to kind of interweave our own histories of the images. So you spend this time with people working and trying to put together a show and a cohesive series, and little sayings and slogans and intricacies of the other person start to manifest themselves in the work. And that's exactly what Between the Margins is. We're in the margins of each other's histories. And that's essentially what led to the process of making the show a very particular way. So the whole idea, we can go back one.
Okay.
The whole idea of you're looking at a 40 image series where the image and the title are completely bound together. They are not to be viewed separately. And they're meant to be viewed from the start to finish, from the beginning to the end, because each one carries on into the next. It's a visual poetry in the purest form for us, because every image is made by the photographer based off a title. And the easy way to put this into context from that title is all the titles are things that we brought forth, whether it's something that Ellen's grandmother said, or Ashley heard me say and then take out of context and turn into something hilarious, or an old saying that David knew, or something our grandparents said. It's our history and musings brought together and slammed together in collaboration. And how we did this is essentially, the process was to take everything that we had mused together and write it on a piece of paper and throw it in a hat. And it's really freeing in this process because you don't have a choice on what you would draw or pick. So therefore, when you reached in, whatever the title was on that piece of paper, you were stuck with it. So the interpretation for the image and the body of work was completely based on the text. So if you were the unfortunate person who drew the phrase, "I hate peaches," and I'll give you the history behind this, is we were actually cutting up a peach while hanging out together, and Ellen Rogers states that she hates peaches. And to the rest of us, that's pure blasphemy. I don't understand, but it's one of those things that, knowing that about Ellen, it made for a title. The question is what does that image look like? Or a title such as One More Thing, or That'll Do, or Don't Tell a Soul, or My Heartbreak City. All these things were from each photographer. And as they drew them, they had to then go out and make what that title said. They had to interpret the person's work and put it into a series. It was awesome because not only does this process force us to work completely as a group together, but it also forces us sometimes to go out on our own because you don't want to influence the images being made. For instance, with Katie on I Hate Peaches, she drew that, she had to make that image, but I didn't go with her to make it because my interpretation of I Hate Peaches is not what we wanted to see from her. So every image is built from the title, and every image is built from what you think that person was getting at or what their version of that is viewed through your lens, completely trying to destroy the author. And the great thing about this is, and it's a little harder to tell from the screen, but if you see it in person, everybody shoots a different format. Everybody shoots a different camera. David shoots Polaroids. He's primarily a Polaroid artist. It didn't matter because the way we treated the image and the title together, they were meant to string. It's a series that is built off the entire act of collaboration. Here, for instance, is me and Ellen shooting a location that's in the show. We both had images for this, but the great thing about working collaboratively in this and making art that is one voice is, quite frankly, the best photo, the best concept, the best thing, it goes. It's an equal playing field amongst us, which has been the most rewarding part and thing that I enjoy coming from the classroom perspective of working with people. It's about the work, and the work is what matters. And in putting this show together, it became very apparent, and here's us in an edit, that not only did everybody have to kill their darlings, you had to understand too that it was about the voice of the image leading through the series. So you thought you may have had the best thing ever made, but when we stringed it together and the rest, your sacred child or whatever it was, we killed it, and we killed it with a vengeance. And that's what's remarkable about working collaborative like this with that one voice mindset, is that there is no one image better than the other. There is no one image more important than the other. And ultimately, that's what Due South is about. It's about creating voice and narrative in our subject matter about what we're trying to make important and show it that way to where it's not important as to who made it. It's about what you're reading and learning from the artwork we make collaboratively. It's been one of the biggest joys that I've ever taken part of in my artistic career. And I could go on and on forever, but that's not what you came here for. So that being said, I'm going to let Ellen talk to you about one of her images that she made in the series.
Hey everybody, I'm Ellen. Okay, we're doing this one first. All right, so everyone just saw a picture of Ryan and I actually shooting this location together. And this is the title of this image is "It Was Fun Till It Wasn't," and I believe this is Ryan's title. Am I correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I don't know if that matters, but I always like to know. There's a lot of titles here, but you know, as I was thinking about what I was going to say about these two images that I'm going to talk about, they have a completely new meaning. They have completely different meanings for me now in the wake of 2020. And in this image, this is like a roadside juke joint. And it was fun till it wasn't. And that goes back a lot to my history. I'm an oversharer, so I'm just going to share this right now. I've been sober for about 14 years, and I'm from a very rural Delta community, Mississippi Delta community, and you know there's a lot of drinking in like roadside juke joints, and it was real fun when I was like a kid and everything, and it got to be to a point where it wasn't fun anymore, which, as the title says, it was fun until it wasn't. And so this was kind of like my homage to that whole thing. But now in the wake of 2020, all I can see is that American flag up there in the corner. And I don't know if y'all are having fun right now, but you know, the past couple months have been pretty challenging in this country, as they have been all over the world. But you know, I live in America, so that's what I see. You know, and it's not too much fun right now. So that is what it means to me now. And that's kind of an incredible thing about photography is, or any sort of art. It can mean a certain thing to you at one point in your life. And then, hell, not even a year later, it means something completely different. So that is, it was fun till it wasn't. And are we doing another one, or is that it? I think
I
had a spiel on the next one too, but
here you go.
oh, there we go.
Judge.
Hey everybody, I'm David Mccarty, and I'm really thankful to be here with y'all. Professor Wetzel, thanks for having us and being patient with me as I jumped on a little late. Mine is much cheerier than Ellen's because it's not about the dissolution of everything we have ever cared about, neon legs in Memphis. So my favorite part, and I'm assuming, but don't know because we can't see all y'all, but that we have a bunch of artists here, people who care about art or want to be artists. But when Ryan talked about and showed some insights into the process, I'll tell you what's challenging for you. And I'm older than everybody else in the group. I'm at this point, one of the people that works with me likes to talk about how I'm in my 50s. I'm not, but I feel like it this year. But it's very humbling to be with, thank you, actually, Ancient of Days. It's so humbling to be with great artists who you care about and you respect, and you think they're your peers until you spread all your work from the year out on a table, and then you realize that they are not your peers. So it's so challenging and so wonderful to be with other artists, but it can be intimidating sometimes. And that for me, this past few years with Due South, that was ended up being more of a thrill as it inspires me to try to do new things or try to get out of my comfort zone. Because for me, the act of creation was often very solitary. But many of the images I've made in the past few years, like this one, this is my divorce list, was within collaboration or because explicitly the other people here. This title is from, and Ellen, you got to tell the story. It's not my title, it's Ellen's. It's called This Is My Divorce List, which is...
Well, I mean, I've been divorced, and my ex-husband thought that he was going to take my Jack Spencer photo, and I was not having it. This was on my divorce list. So back to you, David.
So, we had these titles, and Ryan was in Ryan, you were doing a full week in residency on Ship Island. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, Horn Island, I'm sorry, in the Gulf of Mexico. And so Katie was in Memphis and she said, why don't you come up? We went to see X play at Graceland. And then we went shooting. We just drove up and down Poplar. We drove all around Memphis and then West Memphis and Arkansas. But she wanted to take me here because if I have something that I can do sometimes, it's this film I use, this Polaroid film, will soak up neon in a way that is, I just think, very beautifully evocative. And this image, while we made it, Katie and I made it together, I think 2 years ago, Katie? Last year?
Last
Years have no more meaning. We did it at some point, and she took me there because she thought I would like it. And I'm the type of person, I don't know if you are, but I'm the type of person that if there's some neon legs, that's all I care about. Like I would have punched somebody in the face to look at them and take a photo of it. And we only made a couple. But I would have only been there, and I'd never been there before. And it's like many things, it'll disappear in a year or two. But it's only because of the collaboration with these people, like how Ellen made it was fun until it wasn't, that I've gotten to make art. So if we leave you with any impression in this, or if I can give you any insight into this, is that sometimes art for me is very much a saving thing that lets me feel good and lets me change something in my life or create something. But the joy in it for me in the past couple of years has come with working with other people. But yeah, these are neon legs. It's a place you're not supposed to go to. By the way, don't go there.
Actually an awful spot.
Don't tell them that. Tell them it's some sort of terrifying place.
So this one was one I shot on my own, actually. It was not a group shoot. And I was born in Tupelo, Mississippi. And if you know your Elvis history, you know that's where he was also born and raised for at least the first few years of his life. So I've always felt this weird connection in North Mississippi to Elvis Presley. And I can't help but be drawn to his image. And I have driven past this building many times. I've always noticed this mural, but I never stopped to photograph it. And then recently I stopped and captured it. And I was thinking about the title, Try and Shake Them Ghosts. And I mean, there's so many ghosts in the South anyway. And I feel like Elvis is sort of a personal ghost for me sometimes. And it just was a perfect fit. And I'm really glad I shot this because that building's gone.
As of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was torn down maybe a couple months after I took the picture. So, yeah.
I love that one.
I think we got you up next.
Okay, yeah, this is me. This
photo
image is,
sucks.
do what?
Photo sucks.
That would not be the first time I've heard that to any critique, but I grew up in Northeast Arkansas, but kind of in a weird little limbo. My mother taught at a college there, and my dad was in law enforcement, and we were stationed there. But where my mother grew up is a farm town, and it's about 45 minutes away. So I spent the majority of my youth, you could get a driver's license in Arkansas at 14. I started driving actually a little bit earlier than that illegally, but anybody that knows me would not be shocked at that anyway. But I spent most of the majority of my youth driving to work on the farm and then coming back home. And this is a bar that is on the way in the middle of nowhere to our family farm. And it's one of those things that I've seen a million times. And I kind of always debate when making work, I'm always looking for something that I don't know or a place I don't know that then I identify with what it is in relation to my home or where I'm, or sorry, not where I'm from, but who I am. But when making this series, the way we were doing it, I wanted to kind of really push and question that. So I started kind of traveling the old routes and doing things that I haven't done in, just shy of like 20 years. And this bar stands there and it's still there. And that was a Friday night. There's one car in the parking lot and I'm sure it's the bartenders and somebody else is in there sitting in a chair. And I stood in the middle of the road, which is a 2-lane road. It's flat in every which direction. And since it's a night shot, it's on a tripod to get the exposure right. And I sat there and was Googled at and stared at through the windows of why it was important to me. It's important to me because it's also one of those things that a tackle. Last Night in Town is actually David's title, but my interpretation of it is I've had a lot of Last Night in Towns on a stool under some neon, hearing the best of Waylon Jennings at a level that you just can't normally hear, while pool balls cracked in a corner and people drank stale beer and smoked Winston-Salems and bitched about whatever was going on in the world. And there's something that I always kind of liked about it, but I also hate about it, that's the way it is. And the Last Night in Town part with David is there's part of me that I don't have any more Last Night in Towns. I hope I don't. And I think collectively as a group, several of us also don't. And Ellen kind of made reference to that in a juke joint photo. But the Last Night in Town part, particularly as we were in the political realm that we were in, and also, you'll see the Southern symbolism, the Confederate flag in there. I hope that that's the last night in town for that flag. I hope that it's the last night in town for a lot of the ideology that comes out of these spots. And it's me wrestling and reckoning with, where I'm from and what I love about it and what I also hate about it. In the pictures, you meant to pull out some of that shadow and tone of, reckoning. I think photography as a whole is the ultimate tool for having a reckoning with oneself. And it's cheap for me to say that because I figure sculptors and painters, it's the same thing. But the photo part of it is there's photos that I made 10 years ago that I can't look at the same now, don't have that same appeal in the same way Ellen brought up earlier, or when I've worked with Ashley on some of her other work, you look at something, the passage of time and what it makes and what it says to you. The most important thing for me in a photograph is what it signs is not often what it signifies. And by having to take that title of David's Last Night in Town, what I'm saying about it is the patrons would not be happy about it probably to some degree, but that's what I hope it is. I hope it is the last night in town for a lot of that. But it also ultimately, and I'm not just saying this because I made it, there is something beautiful about it. And I think, David said it with his image, there is something to be said of a neon home in the way neon photographs that is just beautiful. But to me, this desolate bar with far too many flags, 2 American, 1 Confederate, and enough ads for Miller Lite that they obviously own stock. I mean, there's no other signs for anything else. You know what you're getting, but I want to take that and make you question it by making this photo. What you're seeing is hopefully not what you're thinking about. And that's really why it's paired with that title, is I want you to question and deconstruct what it is when they're put in that way. And I think our show as a whole is all about that deconstruction of what something is in the print and what it says. And the investigation for the viewer is really what's the most important part for me in that. I think these images work in that way. And this one in particular, I like for the debate that it has. Plus, it's just, it's a fun thing to shoot back home and looking at things in a different way. We got another one for you coming up. Somebody's here. I believe it's Ashley's. Yeah.
Hey, I'm Ashley. I am not from Mississippi, but I do live here now. And I did not know what a big influence the divide between Mississippi and Arkansas and their deltas was until I met Ryan.
It's legit.
But anyway, it's been really wonderful to work with this group. I feel like it stretches my brain in a different way to collaborate with others who push me to think about work in ways I wouldn't have. And so I've really enjoyed working with these guys, and I'm thankful for them. So this is an image I made when I was traveling, I think, on my own. And like Ellen said, it has a little more meaning with 2020 being a hectic and stressful year. But the image has like a calm before the storm for me. And it was, an abandoned hotel on the side of the road. And I think it's been abandoned for a while, but all of the rooms are completely made up like this, like they're waiting for the guests, which is very eerie. So I don't know. I loved the image paired with the title, and I don't remember who wrote this title, but I think that's kind of the point, that the authorship is blurred. Ryan mentioned that. Even last night I was talking to my husband about the work, and he was like, "Oh, you shot this?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." I was like, "Ryan did." So it's kind of funny, like, even the people closest to us have trouble picking out which image is ours, which I think was the whole point of making this body of work, which is just the image and the title working together, and the person who took it just kind of stepping back. And that was really a really fun process. So I enjoyed it.
Now, and I will say, sorry to interrupt for Ellen's next, what Ashley said about people not knowing who's who. We have for lack of better words, a fan, a young man in Austin, Texas, enjoys our work quite thoroughly. When he saw this show debuted at the Center for Southeast Photography in Greenville, South Carolina, and we had title cards, but no authorship, just the media and what it was. He felt like he knew every single one of them, and he went through all of them, and he wasn't correct on any of them. And I think for me and Ashley, we were talking while he was doing it, that's been one of the best joys of 2020 for me, was somebody utterly being perplexed by it. And then also questioning the ego part of, why wouldn't you tell me who it is? In this group, it doesn't matter. That's not the point of it. So that kind of interplay of not knowing who's what, I'll enjoy that the rest of my life. If this show is up, it just makes me happy every day. Sorry, Ellen, go ahead.
You're on mute.
No, thank you for saying that, Ryan. We forgot to mention that, it's people can't tell who made what, and it doesn't matter to us, which has been really kind of a nurturing part of this whole thing.
This is Ashley's photo.
This is not Ashley's photo.
I tell everyone this is Ashley's photo.
Well, speaking
I really
of,
do.
Speaking of a photo taking on new meaning in the wake of 2020, I was texting with Katie today. I said, I feel like that photo was kind of almost an omen at this point. Katie and Ryan came and scooped me up at the end of my pregnancy, and I thought I was in hell. I only thought I was in hell as we were on these really sketchy back roads in the middle of nowhere around Jackson, and Ryan is guarding the car while I'm peeing on the side of the road because I'm 400 months pregnant. I remember we came around like a corner and there was this sign and we all just screamed. And I'm sure because they felt sorry for me because I was an actual whale, they let me get this photo. When we got out of the car, it was beside a driveway. When you got out of the car, you could hear like metal music, like playing back in these woods and dogs barking. I mean, so like, I don't know, was it the gates of hell? It could have been. And now looking at this, I'm taking my 2020 perspective, the perspective that I'm working with now. And I'm like, no, this is hell. On some days, that is very much how I feel. And this photo does very much feel like an omen. But what a bizarre thing to just be riding around and all of a sudden, there's just a sign on this tree with the light perfectly hitting it. And it's welcome to hell, because it does look like this kind of incredible, like, forest scene, but then there's this sign. And it's kind of like the scene at the beginning of a horror movie or something, like a Rob Zombie film for sure. So that's how this photo was made. And then the title, Sorry Don't Cut It. Well, I mean, if that's not the theme for the year, Sorry Doesn't Cut It. And I feel like that was a Ryan title.
My grandmother, if you've made any tragic flaw of a mistake or something that somebody did something that was just idiotic, now we would be talking and be like, well, they apologized for it. And she'd just look at you and go, son, sorry, don't cut it.
Yeah. And, my at the time when I made this photo, my husband's apologies for my physical condition, sorry didn't cut it.
No.
Now 2020, sorry doesn't cut it. I'm good. I've had enough. So that's it. I'm gonna shut up now. Somebody else talk.
This is a David Mccarty.
This is the worst place in the world. That's where this was taken. So
I just want to interrupt and apologize to anybody who's on this. We're normally not this depressive, but this is just you signed on, you registered. We love you for coming, but you're going to get some sadness in this show currently.
It's like, well, it was just a bunch of old people talking about how they almost died in this one place, right? That's what all these photos are basically. All of them, the story trails off. It's like ellipses, and then I almost got murdered. Because you're not taking, you might be taking photos at the botanical garden, but normally you're at a place, maybe you're not sure you should be there because that's where there's something there that's flickering and you're looking at it. Like Ron was talking about the bar. But I had gone, this is in deep, deep winter in 2019. And there is the last, speaking of the pandemic, it's still the last drive-in in Mississippi. It's in Iuka, Mississippi. That's in Tishomingo County. It's all the way in the top right corner. A place where in Appalachia, a place where really I don't shoot a lot and haven't traveled around a lot. Ashley makes a lot of really beautiful work up there, but I just never spent a ton of time up there. So I said, it's the winter time. I don't have anything going on. I'm going to drive up there. I'm going to go to the drive-in movies. I'm going to see what there is to see. So I go into the movies. It had gotten really cold, actually. Didn't have a ton of money. And there was this old roadside motel that was set up, a motor court, straight up motor court motel set up probably in the 50s or 60s with what remained of a neon sign. And I said, well, that's where I'm staying for sure. Like if I drive 4 hours and go to a drive-in and eat a big tub of popcorn for 50 cents, I'm staying at the motor court. And so I drive up and I knock on the door and the guy comes out he didn't say anything. He just says, it's $40. I said, okay, well, that seems reasonable. That's a little too low. Like, I've accidentally spent $40 at like Burger King before. If there's 2 or 3 people in the car and you get like just the large fry, it's $40. So I was like, well, $40, that's not too bad. So I start pulling out the debit card, and he goes, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't take that. I said, well, all right. And he told me with precision where the closest ATM was, which was about 15 minutes away. He said, it's $40 in cash only. Okay, I'm growing a little nervous, right? So I go get the cash, I come back. I know nobody on this call has ever gone and gotten cash to give to a weird person at 3 a.m. So I drive back, I give the guy the $40 and he goes, well, I'll take you to one of the good rooms. Oh, well, yeah, give me one of the good ones. So he opens it up and it really is at that point, about 30 degrees outside. It has a couple of the old chrome covered wall heaters. But all I can see is in the back of this room, this kind of blown out air conditioner. And around that, if you can see, this is wood and cardboard. There's a hole cut in the wall where before there was something bigger than whatever that thing was jammed up in there. And the walls, it's hard to tell here because it was very dark and the flash wasn't out, but there was sort of there's a color called muddy purple. And I was texting with Ryan, Katie, and Ellen and Ashley because they were like, do it for the art. It's going to be great. And Ryan was like, you're going to get killed, but we're going to go find the camera and it's going to be awesome. So I literally stayed about 15 minutes and was so uncomfortable of what there was of a bed. I was trying to sleep in my clothes with my jacket as a pillow where none of my body would touch anything in there. And finally, Katie was like, my parents don't live too far from there. She was like, get out of the murder hotel. But, being in these places and even just talking to them, because I might never have gone. And I did by that way, I asked for my money back. And to his credit, he did give it back to me a little reluctantly. But, you do different things sometimes, just looking and seeking and saying, what's behind that corner? What's in this hotel? You don't always like what you find out. And so when we were going through the titles and I pulled mine out of the hat and said it didn't matter anymore, that's such an exclamation or declamation of despair. We're like, it didn't matter anymore. And this place, while in years past might have been a place for families and friends to go stay at this point, it was the last stop. There wasn't anything really below this hotel. It's a by the hour place in Iuka, Mississippi. The reason he didn't have really a firm grasp of what the night rate was is nobody spent the night there. It is just a place you hit below bottom. So it didn't matter anymore. And when we were going through it, I didn't think this image was particularly profound, but I think Ryan was like, no, you got to use this. This is terrible. This really speaks to what apparently was the despair cycle we created. At least to the moment we're in. Ooh, I love this photo so much.
Full of despair, hopefully.
This is an anti-despair photo, Katie. I love this photograph.
Well, thank you. This was one of the examples of drawing your own title, because we all had at least a couple of those, I think, in the mix. We had one. So this was my one. That'll do. And as I recall, you and I were riding around one day and we didn't necessarily have shooting in mind. It wasn't the priority. We were just riding around, but I had the camera and it was near the end of the day. And all of the guys, all of you in this group know I'm the quiet one. I would much prefer to be out of the spotlight, seen and not heard. And so I'm always, I think because my personality is like that, I tend to be drawn to large enveloping landscapes that make me feel very tiny. And when we drove out this way, which is not far from home, there was a place I'd never been before, and the kudzu was just incredibly overwhelming. And it was so picturesque, like a Constable painting. It didn't even seem real. And And we stopped. I said, you have to stop right now. And we stopped the car in the middle of the road. And I got everything framed up. And then I looked closer and I saw this little girl on a four-wheeler about to cross this little ditch right here. I didn't even notice her at first because she was so small. And I was so excited to find a person and to realize it was a girl. And that was the title, That'll Do. It was just kind of a perfect moment. And it's really happy to be there in that instance.
I think too, me and you talked about this a lot. I know there's some people that are from tri-state area, mid-south area, or especially Memphis in this conference call or Zoom. That's 15 minutes from downtown Memphis. So for that landscape to exist, yeah, you know, I can get you to the pyramid from there in about 15 minutes. So it's so out of place too, though, that I think it's the reason why it's always resonated with us. And it's somewhere that I've taken you to a couple different times.
I think this time of year we've never been.
The scale of it has always been, I think, what's been the most enjoyable part, what you talked about. But
Yeah.
it's something that's always stuck with me.
Living in Memphis now, in a city, as opposed to growing up somewhere super rural, this felt so much like home. It was almost like a slap in the face when I saw it. It was a really good feeling. I think we've got one more.
Mm-hmm.
Two more, excuse me.
This is one of my images, and the title has been debated amongst all of us at different times on who wrote it. And it just frankly doesn't matter, as we've talked about, because like I said, that we're always making work collaboratively in everything that we do. And the show being such a collaborative effort to truly deconstruct authorship within the series and still make this visual line where one title and one image leads to the other. There are times where you had such a wide open image or wide open title to make an image. I had a mystery that I waited for a very long time to finish this one out. You know, everybody had, how many images everybody have? It's what?
8.
8, yeah. So I think this was my 8th and final one. And it was a waiting thing. And I had been spending time out alone trying to shoot, wrapping this up. And I wasn't finding anything worth a damn, quite frankly, and nothing that really spoke to me in title and image, because it has to be cohesive. I was lucky to have some really great teachers where I went to school. And there was one thing that has always stuck with me and always worked with us in the group. You know, to put something on the wall, we're already saying it's good enough to be seen and be shown. But when you put it on the wall, the question is, how do we make it better for the next round of things? And that's something that's never, ever left me from my education. So I'm working on this and I can't find anything. And this particular day, like I said, I'm kind of driving back towards home, looking for these themes and explorations of things that I haven't really wrestled with. And then over where I'm from is entirely flat. There's not many hills, but there's one particular spot where it looked like a cloud. But then I realized it wasn't a cloud, and it was a farmer who was doing a controlled burn off on wheat and thrashing the land. I grew up doing that, and it was always one of those things when I was little, particularly little before I was able to work on the farm, it always fascinated me because I didn't understand why it was being burned, or why it would be one day where every farmer in a small town would burn every field. And it's this apocalyptic mess of smoke and embers and heat. And I'm sure anybody who's lived in the South has driven down a 2-lane road and smelled fire and not be able to see it. And then you look behind you and it's this plume cloud coming for you. It's something that's always stuck with me. And there was a mystery behind it to me, essentially why it is there and what's behind it or what's it engulfing. And it's just one of those images that it also took on a very painterly particular feel to it and style. And I made it, and I made 2 or 3. And what you can't see is coming up a turn row is a farmer who's got kerosene on a drip on the back of his tractor. And he saw me and he waved at me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm taking a picture. Your burn off is beautiful." And he goes, "Well, nobody's ever said that," and hit the gas and went on. And I've just never forgotten that little moment of what's mysterious to me versus what's commonplace to somebody else. And that's why the image fit. And it's something I really love about it too. Anytime we obscure a landscape or horizon, the question is what goes behind it or what is it? And that's what I enjoy about it more than anything. We got another one for you.
So I actually took this image in South Carolina when I was back home visiting family. And when I am not collaborating with Due South, I am collaborating with my children who were with me this day. And we saw this and I stopped and got out to look at it because it's so bizarre to have a spaceship in the middle of this very tiny, mostly deserted town. This is actually right next to a gas station. But the reason I thought the title worked with it is because mostly a lot because the kids and I were there together, and we like got out and walked around and like talked about aliens and talked about space. And so like for me looking at this, it is something like the kids and I tested together. So it's more a title. I don't know who wrote it, like Ryan said, but it's a title that like, you know, I think if Ellen wrote it, that which I'm sure she had a different meaning behind it entirely. But like one day the kids will be like, yeah, Mama and I tested that. And it didn't go anywhere. So, but yeah, it was one of those days just driving around and exploring and seeing what we could see. And the South is full of these quirky things still, which is one reason why I think we all love it. I'm sure other parts of the country have quirky things as well, but there's something about the South that ties us together. So.
No, I think that's ultimately the truest thing. Actually, we talked about that before. You know, I told you once before, somebody asked me a lecture, well, these things exist in Maine. And I told them, I said, I'm sure they do. I just don't care that they do. And that's the point of what I think we're trying to make too is, you know, as you look at these, we put all these up for you in this series, this stretch. The whole point of this show, Between the Margins, is about doing the full act of a collaboration amongst 5 people to make art that in a series is one voice. It's not important who made what, it's just important that it all goes together as one voice, that it's, for all intents and matters, it could be one place. It's not, you know, the great thing about what we do is we only really shoot in the South because like I said, that's where our interest lies. But there are images in here that are South Carolina, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama. I mean, it's spread out, but yeah, all of them collectively strung up could be, you know, and not to be cliche or anything, but it kind of is that any small Southern town in the US. But you go through it and you go through the title and the image and you pace through it and you're going to find your own, we hope, you're going to find your own connection to it in place that maybe takes you back to where you're from or how you found that there. And that's really the biggest goal of it is to completely just annihilate the author and force the viewer to put their own authorship in it through our text and image. And that's what Between the Margins is.
We had a great question.
Really wonderful question, actually.
From Scarlett Hendricks. There's 3 parts.
Okay.
It's a great question.
Would y'all like me to read it aloud to y'all?
That would be helpful.
So, hi folks, this is Scarlett. Hi folks, I've thoroughly enjoyed the photos in the museum and have loved the discussion so far tonight. A couple of questions and comments. One main reason to live in the South, so I tell my Yankee friends, I'm married to a Yankee who lives here, he loves it, is the quality of human interaction. But here in these photos, there ain't many people. I find that fascinating. Y'all's South is almost post-apocalyptic. On purpose? So
let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
For me, I'm just going to jump in. When you say human interaction, I don't think every piece of art, to me, period, is always the interplay of man and the human interactions already in it. There isn't a landscape that isn't already touched by man. Therefore, I'm not interested if there's a person in it for scale. That's me personally. I think when you look at a photo of, like, for instance, David's, It Doesn't Matter Anymore, there's a really shitty carpenter in that photo who got paid less than $5 an hour to patch that wall. That's where the gentleman or the person is in the photo for me. And it's the same way in what I make. There's always a person there, but I don't really need them to be there. And I'm not jumping on what everybody else talk about, but when you talk about in the next part, an Eggleston or Christenberry, I have to give Christenberry credit for my answer on that too, because he was asked the same thing. He said, you don't need a person to tell you where you are in a landscape. Person is always there. The land is always representative of the person. And that's what it does for me. But I want everybody else to jump in, so I apologize.
No, I wish we had shown some of the pictures of us at the site of a Christenberry photo that we all like made a pilgrimage to.
I think there was one, like, it was just a selfie.
Oh, okay. You know, I've actually photographed a lot of people, but as Ryan said, we intentionally didn't show people in this body of work. Because as a post-apocalyptic, as the South can sometimes appear, certainly in photograph, and you're only getting this one scene, it is so alive with the people who have made it. And there are definitely some characters down here, and that is one of the reasons that has kept me down here. I have a lot of really good friends that live in New York, and they were like, you need to move up here. And I'm just like, that is not where the work I want to shoot is. I love coming up here and visiting y'all, but this is my home, and I'm going to be staying here for the duration. So, and nobody in this group likes Christenberry, especially Ryan.
I see that David said he didn't know who.
That's the dirtiest comment that anybody's ever made, was to besmirch William Christenberry. That's just, next time we're together, if COVID, yeah, I'm going to choke somebody for that comment.
So yeah, and you know, Eggleston and Christenberry and Sally Mann, they're all
It's the Holy Trinity.
Yeah,
They are, but you know, I think for Scarlett, I don't know if you might have remember when Mr. Christenberry died, they asked Eggleston for a quote, and he said he was the best of us. And I think that's always been telling. And you know, when Christenberry taught at the University of Memphis back when it was known as Memphis State, and it was William Christenberry who was looking at Henri Cartier-Bresson's decisive moment with Eggleston at a laundromat, that they were talking about the obsession of black and white photography. And Christenberry looked at Eggleston and goes, Bill, I like your black and white stuff, but I think you should shoot color. And that's how that beast came into birth. And Mr. Eggleston has no qualms about admitting that. And I think that's what's so interesting about Eggleston. But also with Eggleston, where'd the question go? Kay took it away, sorry. I think when David says, I don't know who Eggleston is though, I live and work in Memphis, and I taught at a place where he lived 2 minutes from the school.
200 feet.
Yeah, it's nothing. I could drive by and see him playing piano and smoking through the window sometimes. I love his work, but I think too with what we're trying to do as a group is, yeah, there's always, you can't make work in the South that doesn't throw a nod to Christenberry or Eggleston or Sally Mann. But we're also trying to make definitive work that stands aside from it. And I think that's why the collaborative process is part of that as well towards it. Love Sally Mann to death, and Ashley and Ellen are disciples of her in many ways, in my opinion, and David is too. I think it's just the type of photo work that she makes. I don't know, you never know. Who knows what we make next? And you may come back and be like, well, where's the Christenberry and Eggleston? This just looks like a Sally Mann retrospective. It's possible. I have no idea.
We were talking a lot about place at this time too, and we seem to keep going back to the landscape. And I think we made a couple of exceptions in the show, because there is the hand holding the gun, which
it's always a fragment.
And then the girl in the four-wheeler. Those are the only two appearances of actual people.
There's something about it. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I almost think if we had included more people, it would have taken away from the titles and from the poetic nature of the exhibition. And I feel like it would have pigeonholed the work a certain way to include people in it. And we were talking about land and place, but I think the lack of people in it kind of help with what we were trying to do and what we were saying with this work.
I think that's a great way to say it, Ashley. And I remember thinking one time I saw the great Mississippi poet Natasha Trethway speak once, and she talked about the markers we put up to denote what is history, what's official, what's real, and how often those markers are written by one type of person about one other type of person. And what was so interesting to her, and they're tiny. If you walk back 20 feet from one of these things, you see this tiny little rectangular square and this giant world around it. And she said that she was interested in what was beyond the borders of those markers. And so when Ryan provided, and a lot of times I do kind of mix up who came up with it. Like I ascribe half the photos in the show to Ashley, but I think Ryan was talking about between the margins, or Katie was, but to me, it does allow that space of personal interpretation, where when you start putting people into it, when you start moving different things into it, you stick a time period on it. It maybe confines it a little bit. So I felt like this show was in some ways almost abstract, which I thought was interesting. I mean, if those of y'all out there who are painting fans, if there are any, my photo is not a photograph, it's a Rothko. It's just a real basic color blocking, right? It's a square, it's a color, it's a stripe. And these things are really left open to interpretation. The titles make it even weirder a little bit, where you just start to pull at the meaning, because you may see one type of meaning through the image, and then the title may pull you in a different direction if you allow yourself to be pulled. We had another question. I want to maybe get back to Scarlett's, but Dylan Barrow asked, I see that most of the images are in a square format. Was that intentional or just a byproduct of the format that you prefer to shoot? Katie, what do you say?
It was intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost a David question, actually.
Well, I mean, I'll chime in the one part. Dylan, I don't know if you've seen the show in person, but Scarlett, you said you had. All those are C prints. They're printed traditional chemical process. We addition them out. I've printed all my life. Well, my photographic career going on 20 years now, printing stuff like that. But the whole bottom line is, when I have to print, and by the way, I am due south printer. We all have different little roles. That's the one I am. I print to shut up. That's my goal. But with trying to print 5 people's work across the board of all the different subject matter, and being that we all have access to 2 of the lovely ladies here, diehard Hasselblads. I have one. Katie has one. Then we all have other cameras as well. But David is a Polaroid artist, and I love that about his work and how it works in that. With the death of the author that we're doing in this show, we purposely, when I printed these to make the negatives, to make what's called a digital C, which is a light bar that prints the image onto E6 Kodak paper, that's ran through the same chemical process you would on making chromogenic prints. I took his border out. We talked about it as a group collectively, because the last thing we wanted you to do, in 4 Kinds of Y'all, you could clearly see the Polaroid turned into a print. With this one, we didn't want anybody to be like, there's David. We wanted you to have to investigate that series. And being that some of my images are film, some of them are square crop sensor and a Fujifilm, some of Katie's are film and square crop, but Ellen and Ashley's are all 120. And 4 Kinds of Y'all, we spread it out. We didn't we had different images in there and different crops. With this, we didn't want you to know who was who. And the easiest way to do that is disguise the crop. Who else has got a question? Or are we going back to another question? Oh, hold on. Something
Another one. Scarlett got it with another one. Are there any other art forms that influence your photography? Southern lit, music, painting? Oh, girl, you just opened up a can of worms on that.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a bad idea. All right, let's do the first part, and then we'll go into part 2, because believe it or not, I'm going to have to do the old grandpa thing and squeeze in to read. other forms of art that influence your photography. I am the child of my mother is a Southern Lit professor and feminist studies and literature, and the grandson of a cotton farmer. So I was screwed from birth. That's just in my genetics, and it's never going to leave, period. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Music, absolutely. Painting, Carol Clore. There's a Carol Clore in my house that does that kind of thing. I'm also going to tell you another secret, though. My going back to my education at MCA, I always would purposely go outside of whatever my subject matter is. So I tell people, if you're going to try and write the great next Southern novel, don't read To Kill a Mockingbird. Don't read As I Lay Dying. Go find something that is outside of that wheelhouse to influence you to look at things anew. I cannot tell you how many times that something has nothing to do with the art that I make is what's been the inspiration. I have an entire series of photographs that's made from a Dave Chappelle stand-up set that's about the South, because it's about questioning what you see and what you hear. It comes from anywhere and everywhere.
Literature's a huge
Literature is a big deal, and music is a huge deal. So I'll let everybody else go on about that one too.
I don't like books.
That's what I say. I think that Ellen has to.
Deputy director.
You should at least tell people what you do when you say that.
Yes, please.
Well, I work for the book festival, the Mississippi Book Festival, and basically what I do is I read and pick out authors to appear at the book festival. So I do like books. That's pretty much the huge portion of my life. But all of us are voracious readers in this group. It is reading Southern authors, or just any kind of author that has pretty much formed the person that I am today. And I would think that everybody, if not everybody in this group, could also say the same thing. So I'm gonna shut up.
That group viewing of Fried Green Tomatoes because we all hadn't seen it.
David's
Why
not.
would I have watched that?
David's not actually Southern.
I was a 25-year-old guy. They're like, when it came out, they're like, well, you didn't watch Fried Green Tomatoes? I said, no, it wasn't at the top of my list that year. I was watching Pulp Fiction, Desperado over and over like an idiot.
That's good stuff.
I think music does inform a lot, though, Scarlett. A lot of our titles in there, if you look, that I like poured over everyone's head and they had to deal with, because it's hard to think up words sometimes. Just say it.
They're hard.
But words are hard. A lot of mine were references to replacement songs or REM stuff, a lot of which to me codes is very Southern, even though the replacements were from Minneapolis, but of course had songs explicitly about Southern life and Southern experience, at least a couple, right? Recording in Memphis and think about Alex Chilton.
Big Memphis ties.
We've said that, me and David had privately, and I'll say it now, that Big Star is probably like the 5th unofficial Due South member that no one knows. Or the 6th, there's a lot of stuff that comes out of that.
Ashley, you're one of the other readers along with Ellen. What are you reading right now? What's informing you right now in this moment?
I am reading a lot of books about birds. So
Really?
apparently all of my reading is centered around migrations, but unintentionally, but yes. But yeah, I think for me personally, I almost can't look at too much photography because I need other influences that are not what I'm actually doing. And I was an art history major in college. And so I think art history does influence work. Also just traveling, and if you have the chance, like not being in the South, you start seeing things about the South that are particular to this region. So I feel like that has influenced and kind of honed my eye when I'm driving around. So I don't know. I always, music, paintings, definitely literature, all the things. And your second part of the question about having a strong sense of being Southern.
I just want to say one thing. Ashley loves dead birds.
Dead bird.
Oh yeah, Ashley loves dead
Ashley's
birds.
the queen of the dead birds, just so
Jacked up, kind of.
The first edit of Between the Margins was 40 dead birds.
But in the hands of her daughter.
Yeah.
You know, it was like the head
You,
pointing at Merrimack, or is it pointing down? Is the blood coming out the?
it doesn't. It's a beautiful image. We're not picking on her for the birds, but it is a running joke where I would make everybody shoot. If it was my call, I would no cars, no signs, in which I don't know what that is, but but
Yeah, that's our Sally Mann connection. Is the blood everywhere? That's the next show. That's the next show. It's called The Blood Everywhere, coming to the Meadows Museum.
no, Ashley, start that second, because I think that's a really interesting question. It's a great question.
Yeah, the sense of the younger South losing the self-consciousness about being Southern. I think we've talked about this, just about how accents are dying out, and Ellen has a particular Delta accent. Ryan does too, and then Katie has like this Northern Mississippi accent. My mother-in-law has an old school Jackson, Mississippi accent. David has his coal miner accent, I think. But I do think that it is slowly dying out, just because of media and what we hear. But I don't know about the losing a sense of being Southern. I live in a rural area, so I feel like people hold on to that very tightly. And maybe I'm mostly interacting with older people. I'm curious what my children will be like right now. They don't want to leave. So they're like, do we have to leave when we get older, or can we just stay here? And I was like, no, gotta leave. So, I mean, I can't quite answer that, because I feel like the people that I interact with hold on to Southernness. They're aware of the faults and the issues, but they're still holding on to the quirkiness. But I don't know what the rest of the group thinks about that.
I stepped out of it too. I was away long enough, and I rejected a lot of it, and just it wasn't important to me because it's what I'd always known, and I wanted to know something different.
Yeah.
So at that younger age, I was trying to find ways to disguise my accent and listening to music and wishing to travel and go see anything other than where I was. But now it's kind of circled back, and I'm in my 30s now, and I've finally reached a point where I understand how important and how special and how rare so much of it has been to live in the South. And I don't know, some people have to go outside of it and then come back and see it new.
The South is like the Hotel California too, though.
Yeah.
People leave and they nearly always come back. I wanted out so bad when I was a young person. And I've lived in Mississippi literally my entire life. And now, even though there's kind of like this really conflicted relationship with it, I feel like we're kind of on the dawn of a new South. And the young, I so much wanted to be rid of this extremely strong accent, which I wasn't even aware that I had. And apparently when I enter Sharkey County, where I'm from, it even gets thicker. I've really embraced my Southernness as I've gotten older, but I was very conflicted about it for a very long time. And I wanted to move. I wanted to live somewhere else. I wanted to live in New York City. And now I would just rather drive bamboo shoots up my nail beds than do that. This is where I'm from. This is like where I'm connected to this land as the rest of us are. And while people say, while it has its issues, there's a lot of good here. And I think, like I said, we are kind of in the dawn of a new South. So
I agree with you. And I hope that that's the case that it stays on. I think we are, as a culture, and as much as a concept that the South is, absolutely, there's been a reckoning, and things have been brought to life that should have been, that we've been talking about forever. But I also think that's part of the thing with being a Southerner. Look, I can't hide where I'm from the moment I say hello to you. You know, it's already the cat's off the bag. And I also, you know, they know I did run from being Southern. The moment I hit 21, I moved to another country. I took a job that didn't require me, but the entire time I was there, I lived in Mexico. I just got made fun of for being Southern. So I knew that there's no hiding that and there's no fighting it. But going back to your question of the art part too, in connection to it, for the majority, my entire undergrad, I refused to make work about the South. Once I got really started in examining how that process worked, all my work was political. I even, you know, I did a water board piece for my senior year and made work about nuclear disarmament and things like that. But the problem is, if you're a Southerner, and I don't care whether you're a young Southerner now figuring out things or you're 65, everybody who lives in the South or is from the South eventually has to face that reckoning of being from here. And I think that's what when I started making work here, was an exploration of that reckoning. And I've been really blessed into my late 30s to make it with 5 other people to question that reckoning. And that's what makes the juice worth the squeeze in making work about the South, especially working with these people. I get to really examine that with them too. And we get to wrestle with things that, you know, question, like, it's a very tightrope to be proud of here and also hate here. And I think that's what we're all constantly doing, because there is no decent po' boy in New York City, but the politics are better. So, you know, it's one of those things where I wrestle with it like that, but I can't separate myself from it. My accent's always going to give me away. Any other ones?
Scarlett's got one last one. The South y'all capture is very much the Delta. For you, in what ways is the Delta different from any of the other South? Well, it's the best.
Yeah, it's the best part. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I'm kidding. I'm
He's
from
not kidding.
I'm from North Louisiana, and the Delta stops in Monroe. I've never been able to say the name of this river.
Washita.
What is it?
And then Washita?
Washita. Thank you. Washita River and head west. My God, this fly is killing me. You're getting more Texan every mile. Was Texas really the South? No. I think it can loosely be called the South. Texas is just kind of Texas, isn't it? But yeah, and I think Ashley answered this pretty well. I mean, it's not all the Delta. It may appear to be all the Delta. And of course, that's where I'm from, and that's where Ryan is from. So we have, that's where all my family still lives, and Ryan's as well.
Yeah. We technically, Ellen and I'm not trying to interrupt her, but in our circle of family, we moved to the big city, and so did David. And I think Ashley too, you being from, well, Greenville, you always said you thought was the largest city, no, smallest city in the world, right? No, Columbia. I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Greenville, man.
But Columbia,
Ashley, get after him.
But Columbia was small, and then you moved to rural Mississippi and realized that Columbia was the Paris of the country compared to where you moved to.
Ashley, tell them where you're from, where you live now.
I was born in Virginia and I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, which, as Ryan said, I thought was tiny. And then I moved to a town called Takapola, population 175. And then I realized I had actually grown up in a really big city. And now I live somewhere where I can see no neighbors. So I'm getting progressively more remote. But yeah, I think it's really interesting, Scarlett, that you think that you perceive the images as being very Delta. I mean, I'm curious as to like what conveys that, because it's fascinating to me because they're taken all over, and it's interesting that they read for you as being in the Delta, and I just think that's really, really interesting.
I think that's the thing that Ashley, me and you talked about it at a different outing one time we were getting ready to shoot, especially when we came back from that photo walk. We kind of made a rule that we were not going to shoot any one location heavy, or because the last thing we wanted, or like for Ellen, why is everybody photographing the damn Blues Trail? That's the only representation of the Mississippi Delta, and the Arkansas Delta has literally none. So if we keep you
Yeah.
guessing, Scarlett, that it's the Delta, I think we've done our job, because it's not, though parts of it are, obviously. But
I don't have a single photo in this show from the Delta. I
Really?
yeah, not a single one.
Hey, I think Scarlett said she was from Monroe. Nothing is everlasting. It was actually in Monroe,
yeah,
Oh.
which is like I'm just looking through it on my phone, trying to remember. I mean, I remember it all, but
yeah.
sometimes it really does flatten out.
Some of mine are in Arkansas, because for those of you that don't know, Katie and I are married. We met in college and have been together now 13 years. But
Today, congratulations.
Thank you. Mississippi is kind of my second adopted home. In fact, we got engaged in Arkansas, so not everything would be damn Mississippi. But the whole point is, when we're making work together, regardless of what side of the river it is, sometimes when I'm printing contact sheets out, you got to kind of go back to the phone, where she's always made a cell phone picture to kind of geocache it, because I don't remember where it is on what side anymore. But I can always tell you where it's not. That's the main thing that I think that the co-op has done as a whole. Our photos always distinctly tell you where they are versus where they're not. If that makes any sense. Heather Wetzel.
I'm just going to jump in and interrupt just for one quick second, and say I know that I know Leandra needs to leave here, and she doesn't want to be rude.
No,
We've
look.
gone over.
I also wanted to mention that if you guys wanted, I'm fine with keeping talking here for a little bit. But if you guys wanted to, we could unmute Scarlett if you wanted to hear what Scarlett was thinking about in terms of why she is seeing these images as so much as the Delta. If Scarlett
Whatever you want. I just have to say, Leandra it was one of my professors at MCA that taught me and that I worked with. She was one of the people who said, "It's good enough to go on the wall. How do we make it better?" So major props to her. I love her dearly. Good to see you.
I just put you on the spot, Leandra, sorry.
We love you.
No, I'll take any questions from anybody else. You've got me for at least 7 more minutes. Sorry for going over, Heather.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, I think people that are interested and want to keep listening, we can keep going for a bit. People that need to leave, do not feel like you're being rude.
No, please.
I think this talk has been great and so entertaining. I've really been enjoying it. So,
Heather Wetzel, do you have a question?
Yes.
I have a question for you.
okay.
In the time of COVID, normally we would have been there to see this show, but I have to, first of all, clap and award you. Cannot tell you how beautiful it looks installed, and the 3D videos you sent us and the mature
So
look
cool.
behind it.
Amazing.
It's stunning.
It's so cool.
Being that we haven't yet been able to come to do a walkthrough, how does it read to you on the wall in there? How do you navigate it?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say, I just think it's a beautiful show. The dimensions of it, and it just works in that space so nicely. Because I had a little bit of more inside information, and I knew that it starts with a certain image, that makes it a lot easier to kind of move around. Not that it's a problem to move around at all anyway, but just knowing where to start gives you a little bit more of an insight to kind of moving through the sequence in the correct order. It's just, I'm really happy that it's here in this space, and I'm just thrilled that we were able to make this happen, and that I could present it in a way to other people who aren't able to be here too. So, Matterport makes it easy. It just, takes a little time to do the 3D scanning, and, to do it a couple times when you're first learning, because you don't do it right the first time and things don't work out.
Of course not.
But yeah, it's been, I thank you guys so much for, agreeing to put up this work here in the museum, and I wish we could be open to the public for more people to see it, but at least we have this little interim stopgap of the
Yeah.
force.
It's been a good thing.
It's been a great thing. It's been a great thing.
Yeah.
Scarlett said, wow, it feels like the Delta, a bit shabby, quirky, whimsical at times, ultimately beautiful in a weird fiction way. I feel like the Delta is kind of, maybe I'm wrong when I say this, maybe people think of like New Orleans when they think of the South, but everyone has probably seen images of the Delta at some point, whether they know it or not. And it's just kind of synonymous with the South. I mean, it's what I think of, but I mean, hell, I'm from there. So I do think the Delta has been greatly covered by all kinds of artists, photographers. Don't say that, David. We have to be right in this forum. But you know what Ron said at the beginning, we wanted to show images of the South by Southern people who knew kind of what the whole deal was. And like you said, I'm not saying that the images that people that are not from here that came in and made photos are not fantastic and compelling. We just we were just trying to, I don't know, we were just trying to do something that we felt was not authentic. And I'm not saying that the other stuff was not authentic. Please don't say please don't think I'm saying that.
No, but you're wanting to further the conversation. That's the point of what we're trying to do. Yes, there's Eggleston style photos and everything, but you know, I hate to say it, Eggleston also has been pulling images that he made in the 60s to sell a book that I bought, damn it, hook, line, and sinker. You know, that happens. But we're trying to further the conversation, you know, ultimately kind of secretly for me, and the group's heard me say this, I want to pay tribute to the people that always come before us in the same way a musician does when an album comes out. But I kind of want mine to look like David Lynch was born in Arkansas, you know, be just off skew enough to not be anybody else's, which is part of it. Dylan, are you, yeah, I'm sorry, somebody's.
What other artists do y'all turn to for inspiration? Anyone who'd surprise?
Oh my God, Chris Farin. Ashley, we've never talked about him.
Yes, we have.
Have we?
Yeah, in Birmingham, we talked about him for a long time.
Let's
Or
talk
maybe
about it again.
I thought we.
That to me, and I'll tell you that Dylan asked, you know, who are you turning to right now? Ashley said Chris Farin, who, if y'all know him, I just think is an astounding, thoughtful, empathetic photographer who does what to me are very Southern images. He was in a band that I was obsessed with called the Rocketeens. He was the drummer, and who I got to see kind of maybe one time in Atlanta in the late 90s. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But a person who I had always sort of overlooked, and I said the Holy Trinity earlier, Mr. Christenberry and Eggleston and Sally Mann, but y'all, Gordon Parks now, every time I see his work, which I'd only ever seen before, like Muhammad Ali over here, and then like certain things for Look Magazine over here. But now it's through Instagram, that Gordon Parks account.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, every day my ears get pinned back. And so my view of maybe what the Southern canon is maybe changing or evolving or growing to encompass much more powerful voices than just like, here's this Cadillac that's broke down, which I like that a lot.
There's a great book. I just bought it for my mother and sent it to her. It's been in print for a long time, but it's Gordon Parks, and he did The Invisible Man. He interpreted Elson's book, The Invisible Man, through photography in New York and throughout all kinds of it's stunning. You should check that out, David. Mine's kind of funny, Dylan. I come from a documentary background. That's essentially what my undergrad degree is in, and I taught social doc. My biggest photographic influences are, none of them are Southern. They're all, oddly enough, and those on this panel can tell you from being in my guest bedroom, I had probably got every single book of war photography from the Civil War to the present. So most of mine, when I'm always looking at something, Phil John Griffith, Robert Capa is still one of those things I look at on a monthly basis. Lindsay Adaro, and then probably what I've been doing more so lately than anything is looking at an old Polaroid book that is all anonymous artists. And they make fun of me all the time. I've got Sally Mann's A Thousand Crossings. It's still in the wrapper, which is the point of me. Yeah, the point of me.
I don't have it.
Is I won't look at anything. Like I'll buy a lot of Southern art books that I love, but I won't open them for years because I'm trying to steer clear. Me and Ellen both. I think the last photo book I bought, Ellen, that was like a big expenditure is when I tracked down.
I was just about to type him too in this.
No, go ahead, say it.
Robert Polidori. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I went on a Polidori kick of going back and finding his stuff. And me and Ellen both have a Chernobyl obsession, and I managed to find some early printings of that. And that David's shaking his head, but David's from Alabama.
I don't get it.
Pay attention to everything.
I don't get it.
But yeah, I try, and you know, a lot of old stuff out of the '60s, Jim Marshall, anything, some of the best
Jim Marshall
for anything is find an AP photo press book that's like the year of the AP photo line for so many years. Look at that. And then my favorite thing, I told Heather this, is find an artist, photo artist that work in traditional old school processes. Find something you haven't looked at in a long time. Go down the daguerreotype hole or the pinhole or whatever it is. Look at that, because looking at that type of photography has done nothing but make me a better photographer than what I'm doing today. You know, don't ever go play the hits. Find the obscure punk rock album in the back of the tray. That always is my best advice, period. What's that? Oh, what's that Don saying?
Oh, it's just to David.
Oh, David, sorry. David, Don Baker said something to you about a song title.
Oh, we're talking about a song called Ode to Billy Joe. So the great Bobby Gentry song. Don, I didn't put all this in the chat, but I have a friend who dated Bobby Gentry. So
she still lives in Memphis and won't as a recluse. She lives across Shelby Farms.
I've never met her, never seen her. And so like when somebody, he's in his 70s now, and he brought it up sort of like, and it's a person who doesn't really brag, but he was like, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, wait, Bobby, like in the middle of that, I heard like Bobby Gentry and then like Ballroom and then New Orleans. And I was like, what? But I was driving in North Mississippi Sunday and it came on the radio. And I still think it's a very mysterious song. I still think it's a very complex song. I still think there's a lot of subtlety. And the fact that this was written by a young person in the way she weaves in the conversation from the parents, which is just about their life, while talking about tragedy, isn't a thing, kind of like how Ryan said about his grandmother. It's a way old folks in my family dealt with tragedy and horror that would devastate me. They just dealt with it or ate it. They were like, well, you know, so-and-so killed themselves, passion mashed potatoes. You know, it was just very like, what? You know, in every succeeding generation, I feel like we got kind of sort of half that insane fortitude. But both my grandmother, who I was very close to, lived through the Great Depression, you know, lived through having a husband stationed in France and Germany. And so their experiences were so removed from mine. But when I heard that song, Sunday Dawn, that's all I could think of was how she dealt with, like, you know, well, these horrible tragedies in a very passive way. Even while, by the way, the song, you know, you think everything's a big mystery, while the parents obviously know what's going on, even if we don't. That's part one of my series on Ode to Billy Joe, coming on Spotify Premium this fall. I got a lot to say about that song.
Yeah, that's probably our next project is a playlist of music on Spotify that you can download until we can all get back together.
Donnie, we got to get a photographer who's had, you know, fashion photography has an impact, but probably my favorite living photographer in Mississippi is Maldi Scholar Clay. I'm always talking about her. She's a great friend to a lot of us. She does work sometimes that, like us, is really beautiful, and then sometimes it's just work. And I can see the seams more than I do sometimes with people I think of as on these great columns. but it's somebody who's been a great mentor to me. And I just really think keeping your ears open right now, I learn more stuff on Instagram than I ever thought I would. God forbid, but I really do. So of just like new things. It's great. I've got to go eat. I love all y'all. Professor Wetzel, thank you. I've been here for 12 hours. I'm going to go. Good night. Thank y'all for the great.
And he's gone. Wow. I mean, he's just.
Yeah.
Well,
just because he's not here, that was the lawyer in David. Just say that he was out. Yeah. Yeah. That's from him practicing law and now being a judge and being like, done.
Well, are there any last comments that people would like to share or wrap things up with?
I just want to say thank you all that came in and such great questions and actually wanting to hear from us. It's always an honor. Anytime anybody wants to hear me ramble, unfortunately, is a great day. So I just want to be appreciative and so much thanks to the Meadows Museum and Heather Wetzel. That's all I got.
It is always a delight.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful.
I love your stories. And this has been so much fun. Like, it's been, I mean, I know Ryan and Katie because I've worked with them at Memphis College of Art, and I've met Ashley before, but this was just really wonderful to get to hang out. And Ellen, you're just, you're as much fun as Ryan and Katie too. So I just thank you all so much for
We're so honored
doing this and being on and talking tonight, and such great stories you've shared. Thank you.
Oh, and anybody who's still in the panelists that are on here, if you have further questions or inquired anything, due south has a website and an email that you can look up. Katie can tell you.
DueSouthCo.com or Instagram.
Or Instagram, you can hit us up. Look, not really making a lot of work right now. So if you got a question or something you want to know about, it's a great time to email any of us.
Yeah.
On there, you can ask a broad question.
I so wanted the pandemic to ignite this like creative fire in me, and it did the exact opposite. So
Yeah, I could give a lecture on pandemic art making that would absolutely, everyone would leave after 5 minutes of my first spiel. But no, please reach out to us anytime. It's a conversation I always love to have, and don't have any fear whatsoever. Shoot anything. And it might be something that pops in your head 6 months from now. Hit us up.
we got nothing but time, and time doesn't mean anything anymore.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Oh, thank you all again so much. And everybody else, thank you for joining us tonight and hanging in there for the extended conversation, which has been so much fun. I hope everyone has a really lovely evening. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right. I'm going to go celebrate with a piece of chocolate cake now.
Oh, and I didn't notice any Roll Tide.
He didn't. Oh, make that announcement. He didn't say a single Roll Tide.
David Mccarty, and I'm glad this is recorded. Play it on their website, whatever. I'm going out. I'm swinging for the fences. None of us like Alabama, all right? None of us. It's the land between Mississippi and Georgia. Ashley feels this way. Katie feels this way. Ellen, all of us. David Mccarty is born and raised Birmingham. He went to school in Mississippi and never left, but his heart is somewhere still in Tuscaloosa very badly. When things are really good and giddy, he will say Roll Tide out of character. The fact that he didn't tonight, I'm going to go buy a Powerball ticket tomorrow. Odds are good.
False David was here tonight.
That's what it was. It was doppelganger.
Yeah.
And with that, we will then say good night.
Not job.
Thank you both. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good night.